Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of 6 Degrees of Associations. I'm your host, Lucas McCann. With us today, Marsha Flanagan, President and CEO of IAEE, International Association of Exhibitions and Events. Welcome, Marsha.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Lucas.
Absolutely. Well, tell us, Marsha, tell us a little bit more about yourself, your role at IAEE, and then tell us, how did you find this crazy world of associations?
Well, sure. I am almost 12 months into my new position as president and CEO. I was brought on board December 1 of last year, but I've been with IAEE for just over 12 years. So, not new to the organization, but new to the position. Um, Prior to that, I served in a couple of outside the events industry roles, but started actually in the exhibition and events industry. But that story kind of really is an interesting one. I was in graduate school, was in law school, and wasn't really kind of my thing, wasn't working out so well. And went to see a counselor in the admissions department who gave me this kind of battery of tests and inventory assessments of personalities and said, you should consider like the service industry. And I didn't really know kind of what that meant. And she walked me into like this, like, how about hotels, or think about hotels, or, people who work in convention centers. And I still didn't quite understand, but went that direction, really loved where it seemed to be a fit for me. So, long story short, I ended up with a master's in education in meetings, tourism, and recreation management. So, I had to do an internship in all three disciplines. And it was the event side of the industry that I first started in and fell in love with it. And it's been just great. I mean, honestly, I wish I could shout to the mountaintops about the events industry. It's amazing.
Yeah, we talked about this a little before the show, but I'm right there with you. So I would also shout to the mountains. I vividly remember, didn't know anything about trade shows when I got into the work world, and I started working for an organization who worked in the association space, over 20 years ago. And I remember my first show, walking up and down the aisles and in the booth, both sides of it. Just, I was young and just trying to figure out the whole thing. I thought it was a little overwhelming. But at night, we would go to dinners and then we would go to the bars, and I, looking back after a couple of years, those relationships ended up being folks that I still talk to. It's like we went to college together, right? You could call them up right now and we could reminisce. And if they're doing something that relates, we would automatically do business. And so I long ago fell in love with this as well, just from a relationship standpoint of it's some curated, dedicated time to what was really there to do business, but ended up just being building relationship.
Well, I mean, for me, like, specific to association management, my first role in events was for an association teaching people how to run events. So, like, it couldn't have been a perfect fit for me being an education major, working in the education department of an association for those who do meetings and events. And hence where I am now at IAEE, back to overseeing, professional development for an industry. It's just, it's unexplainable. No one could have probably explained association management to me in college at all. My kids, my husband, still my parents before they passed away didn't really know or understand. They understand servant leadership, and which is key to to who I am, my DNA. And so I think that was why I keep getting pulled into the association world. It's that servant leadership mentality.
Yeah. I think it was about 15 years before my wife, was asked at a cocktail party, what does your husband do? Where she was able to accurately somewhat describe, what it is that I do and what associations are. So I can completely relate. It takes some time. Tell us more. I'm very familiar with servant leadership. I have read the books, subscribe to the whole thing. Tell us how that plays out with your association leadership.
Well, I mean, we are very mission driven. I mean, it's to promote the unique value of exhibitions and feeling that passion for our industry and growing up in the events world. I feel that it's my responsibility. It's my duty. My team has been built as mission driven leaders. We just feel very honored to be serving our membership. Um, we at our organization may not be running an emergency room, but we have members that do, or provide services for people that do. So we understand the importance. We understand our value and promoting value back to our members. And man, when it all works out and someone obtains a designation or someone's trade show hits the mark, or when we see new economic impact figures come out, it's just a great feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's always conversation around ROI when it comes to events. I would say on both sides of the equation, right? Well, maybe there's three sides to the equation: exhibitors, attendees, if we're talking traditional trade show, and the association itself, right? Does the board and the association see a return? Tell us a little bit about how you view each one of those, and how do you make this trifecta so that everybody is successful? I know it's a
Well,
really
there,
easy question, right?
no, I mean, those are very different stakeholder groups, right? And so for us at IAEE, it's really important to define the needs of each of those groups. We actually partner with CEAR, which is the Center for Exhibition Industry Research. It is our research arm, subsidiary type relationship, and we provide benchmarks for performance to organizers in key metric areas. So that is one thing that we help with. We're producing research right now on exhibitor retention, engagement, and just how to conduct business on the show floor. So we know that exhibitor ROI is super important. And I think in the future, the continued enhancements that are being made in the technology world is going to, I think, will help the exhibitor community tremendously. But there's a lot of training there involved too, a lot of change in business, a lot of action on their part that's not been the case before.
Yeah. Are there so value? I think you can measure monetarily. You can measure in attendance. You can measure clicks and all the things that happen within all the technology platform. And then there's sort of the intangible measures of thought, feelings, and there's an element of that sort of leads to retention and growth of the event in and of itself. Are there ones that you sort of see or have more value, or maybe let me ask this differently: which are the marks that most exhibitors that don't find growth in their exhibits miss the mark in, or spend the least time thinking about?
Yeah, so that's kind of a twofold question. What I can say as it relates to the organizer benchmarking piece, I am, we're going to be developing a new benchmarking study that comes out early next year. And we know that our current index measures 4 performance indicators. We know, to your point, we need to expand. We need to measure other items. So we're determining what those are, and we're getting feedback now. Is it a net promoter score? Is it the exhibitor retention rate? Is it the net revenue versus gross? So that's something we're going to be delivering to our membership early next year. And we're hoping that that helps define some of those success stories. On the exhibitor side, we've engaged in new technology where we're actually able to track kind of sentiment on the show floor just from facial recognition, and we'll be able to tell different data points as far as, you know, were people that stopped at your booth happy? Were they female? Were they male? Were they how, in addition to the things like you get dwell time and heat maps and things like that. So sentiment's a big piece that we're going to be measuring specifically for our show, and we're seeing it grow in other shows across the US.
That's fascinating. So tell us, what would be an application, or how would somebody, or how are you all using that data specifically in response? How does it change the way you think about, layout, design, attendees, so forth, programming?
Yeah, good question. Like as for education, it's super valuable information because do are the people there, are they engaged the entire time? Do we need to offer 1 hour sessions? Do we need more 20-minute sessions? Like what's that sweet spot for learning? And we've got such a wide age range of members, all the way from starting out in the industry, in college, all the way through to retirement. So we know that learning preferences are different based upon many things, including your age, and so we want to know of those who are attending how engaged they are, what we can do differently. Kind of similar on the show floor too. When we're designing different formats and we know where the traffic may be based upon gender or potentially ages, then what activations can we infuse in different areas that might pull those different groups on the show floor differently?
Yeah. That's fascinating technology. I mean, there's, in the phones, right? There's algorithms galore on every app that you have that's measuring, how long are you scrolling? Where do you stop? How long do you stop? In some cases, if you have it enabled, where are your eyes scanning even on with it? It's almost a little scary. But that's fascinating that this sort of the same application, sort of traffic monitoring, layout design, like you said, programming, all of that can play into to the nth degree. I'm a not so secretive data nerd, so I already start thinking about the applications within. How can you continue to improve? How you can overlay different layouts in the same venue and extrapolate that to really come out with the best outcome.
I think the key takeaway really for associations is really shifting into being a data driven organization and making data driven decisions, even as it relates to events in the trade show floor. It's just, we've gone through a digital transformation. We're still going through it. We're selecting a new AMS. We've got an overlay of business intelligence pieces on top of various technologies we have. We're just trying to be more data driven. You asked a question earlier about your boards as a stakeholder, and it's just much more transparent to be able to provide information, data type information to your board to be able to empower them to make a decision that doesn't then include personal biases or anything like that. So that's a big shift for us.
But a good one.
Yeah.
It's just an intelligent path. I mean, I also heard you say in a previous interview podcast that face to face, will still remain the number one way to do business. So this isn't a push to just go virtual to collect data. This is a push to use data and information and digital information in a way that enhances in person.
Yeah, that personalized experience, right? That's the way you probably shop online. That's the way I mean, the way you get data and, or emails, or, I mean, people are very busy and people are getting emails. I forget the latest stat on how many things that they read or get in an email. And the more personalized you can be, that experience is just enhanced for that customer.
Yeah, attention's the new currency, right? Everybody's
Yeah.
fighting over. And to your point, yes, certainly shop online, which is why all of our local malls are, now going to these entertainment. They're now just experiences. You have bowling alleys in the mall and things like that. It's changed the landscape of that sort of retail space. What are other ways you've seen? Right, we've both gotten to watch this exhibit space change over a couple of decades. What are some of the other trends that you're seeing sort of in the industry?
Well, definitely, I think sustainability is top of mind. I think that people are starting to understand ways in which they can implement small but very powerful ways to do the right thing for the environment. It's hard, I think, for some to feel as though, where do I start? How do I start? It's expensive, but I think it's just a value now that people are embracing, which is great. And so we're seeing more sustainable practices. We're also seeing, that whole shift into really creating inclusive events. Um, if the focus on associations is truly community, then how you build that community comes to life at a show and at a conference. And so you've got to bring that inclusive and welcoming experience. And we even ask the questions on our overall evaluations. I mean, did we provide a welcoming event? Were we inclusive in the way you felt? And I think that's also truly important. This whole value based way of producing an event is going to be what our next generation is going to embrace.
Yeah, I agree. I was recently interviewing somebody that was from the association industry, but in Europe, and it was much more of the focus was those topics: sustainability, inclusion in the association industry in general. It doesn't surprise me that that extends to the exhibit space. I mean, without getting specific, there's areas, if you sort of know how the sausage is made, that can seem very wasteful at times in the exhibit industry. And so I'm glad to hear that those are things that people are championing behind. How can we do this in a better way?
I mean, we turn 100 as an organization in 28. I mean, I would love to be able to stand on the stage and say that every one of our member trade shows incorporate at least one sustainable practice. I mean, that just would be a big win and a big goal of mine to make for the industry.
We work with a lot of associations, selling memberships and sponsorships, and we're exhibits, or we're sort of in the space, right? But we also see a lot of consolidation, like mergers and acquisitions
Yeah.
everywhere, selling memberships and selling exhibits. How do you see that? I could see both sides, right? There's a positive in the sense that I saw an exhibit show, for example, that was almost 40% purchased by one parent company. And then when you showed up, it looked like 22 different companies that were exhibiting, but they were all just essentially swapped up by. Now, the good thing is that the more companies they buy, the more likely they are to guarantee. The risk of that could be if they decide to no longer participate, it takes a bigger space away. There's a big void left behind. What are your thoughts on positives or negatives?
Well, again, I think it depends on the industry sector that you represent. Even in the event space specifically, we're seeing a lot of mergers and acquisitions take place, especially on the independent side for show organizers. But we'll see how it impacts the various industry sectors. But that's something we're definitely keeping our eye on. I think mergers and acquisitions are going to definitely continue and be strong moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's going to continue for some time. I think there's a large portion of our culture as a generation that's retiring out. And, what are they going to do with their business? Ideally, they wanted to see it go on to somewhere, the people involved, continue to have employment and be essentially sold off to somebody who's going to do good things with it, but also sell it off. And so
On the flip side, as it relates to associations, though, I think this is where collaboration can be key because we do rely on a lot of supplier dollars for sponsorships, for exhibits, and things like that. And I think it's really important to have those conversations with your supplier community to really be more I mean, instead of transactional and you're selling, it's really key to find out what they need, what they want, what their organizational goals are, and see how you can best meet them so that you're just doing what's best for your overall association industry and for your supplier community and not stretching them thin.
yeah, and I think there's a broad range to that, right? It's never a one size fits all. What are some of the things that you see on the supplier side that they're looking for? What are those suppliers and sponsors? Why do they show up?
Well, I mean, obviously, the show floor is a great way to showcase their products and services. But we're still continuing to see activations off the show floor. We're actually seeing our research is showing an increase in even on-site signage as being one of the things that sponsors are looking to pay for. Uh, but I think it's just the engagement piece.
Mm-hmm.
It's the use of the technology. It's how to get in front of an audience. Like I think the exhibitors are just wanting that solo time to get in front of a group again, augmenting maybe the floor show space with an activation or a sponsorship. Having an a la carte sponsorship opportunity is key.
Yeah. Is it lead to an expansion or shrinkage in sort of the size of a booth? Like, does consolidation always mean bigger booths?
It just really depends on the exhibitor. I mean, we've seen some people increase their booth size even with an activation. We've seen some decrease it, and that's just specific to our show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think there's just a lot of things in play. It depends on what products they're wanting to launch. And then even the shows that some people are exhibiting in, space is limited, period. I mean, these shows have been, some of these long-standing shows have been sold out for years and years and years. And there's no way to expand your space or even decrease at times. You're just lucky to get your space. There's a wait list, right? So this is where the activations come into play, extra signage comes into play. Like, what else can we do to stand out?
Yeah, if you're not in the space, maybe they don't know. They're for the larger shows. They're really quite limited, right? I mean, what
Mm-hmm.
is there? I mean, if you're at the top, you're in the top 5% of exhibits in the U.S. I mean, how many spaces do they really have to choose from?
Yeah,
I mean, you can go to
that's true.
Toronto. You got a pretty good sized space there in Dallas where you are.
Well, I mean,
Orlando,
yeah,
Vegas.
Orlando, Vegas, New Orleans, Dallas. I mean, Cormac, Javits. I mean, we're lucky in the U.S. We have great convention center space.
Yeah,
Um, but again, I mean, some shows are offering outdoor space. Some are offering, adjacent space in a hotel. Really trying to expand what that from the time you enter that event to exit, what does that attendee journey look like? Does it start when they get there? What happens beforehand? And then how do you continue that community 365 days a year, right? So
yeah,
is it a one and done and then you're on to next year, or do you want to continue that with content year round?
yeah. I want to just take a turn, take us in a different direction for a second. The international part of your association, right? You see these sports teams and other industries that are just feels like running across the ponds to try to expand and capture more audience. Like the NFL, like they're having games in Brazil and they've had
Yeah.
games in Europe for years, and they're trying to take their brand out there. You know, if you're an association, what is typically a tipping point or an opportunity to look internationally to expand, either go to a different space, go to a different country? What is usually the impetus that says, all right, I want to go elsewhere, I want to go beyond the US walls?
Well, we've led really with education. That's where we go first. We have a number of MOUs with and license agreements with various entities around the world to deliver really workforce training in the exhibition industry. So we have our CEM certification and a number of other kind of entry level offerings. So that's kind of where we lead first. I mean, the U.S. has been a leader in in that area. While trade shows were not necessarily invented here, that's not the case at all. But I think that's been our help to other countries is in training. Other countries really like to know the U.S. model and what's worked for the U.S.
Yeah, again, going back to the interview with the association executive in Europe, that he echoed the same thing that you just said, Marsha, which was they very much look to the U.S. in terms of the structure, the model, what's driving the returns or the revenues, how that works. They're very intrigued on getting the collective community together. Their focus is sometimes different, as I mentioned, more heavily on sustainability and things like
Yeah,
that. So it's interesting. We are sort of a poster child in that sense in the U.S., and then to take that out and reach broader audience seems attractive. Although I have talked to folks in the past that, again, it seems like a daunting endeavor. Like VPs or directors who their executive director, CEO has said, "Hey, I want you to take our show internationally in 2 years. Go figure it out."
yeah. Well, we've always led with education, and if an event comes, next, that's what follows. We do have a recognized competency model with the U.S. Department of Labor. Exhibitions and events are formally recognized there, and so in working with other government agencies around the world, we're able to show them that we do have backing from our government as far as the skills and competencies needed for success and roles within our industry. And that's always very welcoming with other groups around the world for our training.
Yeah. So you've obviously been to quite a few events. If you're looking back in your own travels, what are those for you personally that stick out as just the most memorable? What are sort of those either programs or pieces of that event that made it memorable for you?
Oh gosh, that's a really hard one. I feel bad. I
You don't
don't
have to
think
get
I can.
specific and call people out or not mention people that may want to be mentioned here on this, but we'll do very general. What was the theme or program or part of that event?
Okay. Well, one thing is, as an event organizer, I probably make the worst attendee, right? I, so I'm probably like, how do I get the app again? And where am I supposed to get my badge again? And then you read everything on the plane. So that's terrible. So I do know I've seen and been to events where they prepare their first timers in such an amazing way. I think that's really key, getting people like you have to take yourself out of the planning piece and look at through the lens of an attendee and be very specific. You can't say, hey, download the app before you go. Okay, well, where's the app? Like, it's the little details, right? And I know we've been guilty of that as well, but I that's one thing that sticks out. And then I think anything that I'm a big like a surprise and delight person because
Mm,
we do go to these events, right? And it's like, oh, okay, and then something might happen, and I can't think of something like off the top of my head, but you're like, wow, that was really creative. Like that was a great idea. I mean, it's those little small moments that build up, and it just makes the experience just memorable overall.
yeah, being different,
Hmm.
standing out. Um,
Take
you're
a
right. There are,
risk,
without
take a risk.
without calling anybody out, there can be some repetition to the event if you're
Of
kind of going through the
course.
motions, and I won't call anybody out, but that's that is a little bit monotonous over the
Well,
years, especially if it's
associations
not your
have to
first.
do this or they have to do that. You have to have a business meeting. You may have to do a general session, but do something different, even if it's the seating or it's this or that. Like, just take a risk and be okay to take a risk and fail. That's the big thing.
Yeah. I was listening to an interview with the founder of the Bananas, the baseball
Oh,
team,
yeah.
right? And he was saying essentially the same thing. He was a tryout, and he was saying, this was just, I think maybe even today I saw this. Jesse was saying, at this tryout, it's going to be very different. We're encouraging you and expecting you to try something new, because if you don't, and they're not here to see just a baseball game, they're here to see something that they've never seen happen at a baseball game. So yeah, do a backflip, light the ball on fire, throw your bat 3 times in the air and then hit the ball when it lands. That sort of thing is kind of what stands out. I think it's in the same vein. I think it's what makes them memorable and exciting and different.
Yeah, I agree. Be a Savannah banana, right?
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
it.
that,
New tagline for event specialist: be a Savannah banana. It might just work. Put some stilts on, walk around the show floor. Those
I
are the
mean,
things that stand out.
yeah. Who would have
I,
thought like you could disrupt baseball the way they did, right?
I mean, it's amazing. They're setting records, and my kids got to see them earlier this year. They were just both baseball fans to begin with, but yeah, blown away, and started somewhere. Took a risk.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, Marsha, how about a couple of quick, fun ones? I like to ask. What's obviously there's lots of exhibits on your calendar, but what is December 31st? You're putting together your new calendar for 25. What's the one thing that goes on there first and does not move?
Well, obviously, our annual convention is not one that I can miss. That's always in the last quarter of the year, so that's a definite. Um, Gosh, I probably go to two, three, four trade shows a month.
Oh, wow.
So, probably in Asia three or four times. Some of the shows in China are just so fascinating with AI technology. So those are a lot of fun. I actually enjoy, believe it or not, our board meetings. I
Hmm.
just our board is phenomenal. They've been so supportive of me over the year, and we've done some great strategic work. And I can't wait to continue to work long term and see what's ahead for the future of exhibitions. I'm excited.
That's fun. Where are you headed next year in the fourth quarter for your event?
We are going to Houston, Texas.
Oh,
So
you're not
we'll be
traveling
in
very far.
no, not far, but LA this December, and then Houston next year. So a couple of weeks, and we'll be in LA.
That's good. What's something about Marsha that's not on your resume, we can't find on the internet? AI doesn't already know about you. It
That's
knows a
funny.
lot.
Gosh, couple of things. I love baseball. So when you talk about Savannah Bananas, like I grew up playing softball my entire life. Finally gave it up when I hit 40. Just couldn't do it anymore. Love it. Love it. Still love baseball. There's
Mm-hmm.
just nothing better than going to a baseball game. I I am super big on family. I have two kiddos, one in college, one in high school, and my husband. And to me, my family is my support group. That being a servant leader, we had to get together, and before I took on this role, we had to all agree upon it together. I mean, it takes time and travel, and there's as an association executive, Lucas, you might be on the phone at 5 in the morning. You might be on the phone at 2 in the morning. If you've got an international member or a problem, you never know. You're always worried about your team. You're always worried about something. And so it was important. My family said, yes, we're all in. So I don't know that that's something people truly know, but I've got a great team. I'm so proud of them. I just would do anything for them. Probably something I don't tell them enough, but it's family and my extended family at work. It means a lot.
Amen. That's wonderful. I mean, yeah, I feel like often the business inconveniences me more than I inconvenience the business, and that's me serving and giving of myself. And I have a similar support system at home that if they weren't there, I wouldn't be able to do this. I'd just be, uh, yeah, I don't know what I'd be, but so I'm very, very thankful for their support. And doing 3 or 4 exhibits a month, that's a lot of travel. It's a lot of being away, and it's difficult balancing being a parent and doing this industry at this level. It takes a lot, but it's very rewarding. I do feel like maybe it sounds like you feel the same. I don't dread Mondays. I never have, the case of the Mondays. I don't mind working late. I really enjoy what I do and working in the association industry. And so it doesn't always feel like working. I feel like I hear a lot of people say that's the goal. So I've made it.
And I'm really hoping we have a next generation to come in and continue to lead efforts on behalf of associations. I mean, again, we've been around almost 100 years. I know we can be around another 100. We're not going to look the same in 100 years, but that's the exciting piece, right? And passing the torch on to that next generation. That's part of what I'd like to do, is really identify some of those top leaders in exhibitions and really start helping them move into those next level positions.
Yeah. Well, you're out there. And as I mentioned, I'm a big fan. I'd support, championing folks to that industry. And it's made a lot of relationships and good times for me. So you're in a good spot. You got an attractive seat to recruit people into. So enjoy. Well, I have the unfortunate pleasure of wrapping us up. But before we head out, Marsha, I will ask you: is there somebody in your network that you've thought of that you think our audience would enjoy hearing from?
So I got to think about that. I haven't come up with that right name yet. I promise I'll share that with you, but I really want to think about not just exhibition, related, but just association related, because I've got some people that I've followed throughout my career that are association leaders. So if I could share that with you, I definitely want to.
Sounds good. Well, I won't press you for now, but thank you so much, Marsha, for giving us the time. As we said, it's precious, and you got a lot going on, working otherwise, and we really thank you for talking with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Lucas. I appreciate it very much.